Aloha! Are you ready for this one? You better put your cosmic hat on because we go deep. FleurBrun, very intuitive, celestial, connected being. Oh my gosh, just what a privilege, what an honor to have a conversation with someone who is so knowledgeable about celestial beings, about aliens, ETs, everything. That's what I really want to do here on the channel is kind of demystify all of this woo-woo stuff, this new age stuff, and really, bring it down into something you can really resonate with. And that's exactly what me and FleurBrun really talked about here, the power of how you can connect to these celestial beings, what to do about it, how to really put this into a practice. You're going to learn so much about the real meanings of ETs, aliens, what I like to call celestial beings. They are here to help us. They are here to help us evolve, help us on this ascension, help us on this rising consciousness. And, they're around us 24/7. I mean, this is something that is extremely positive in my life. And it's just, getting through all those programs and really starting to awaken to this truth. So really excited to present FleurBrun. This is an awesome podcast, guys. You guys are really going to love it. First off, thank you so much for leaving a review on iTunes. That's really the best thing that you can do to get this show alive and spread all this awareness, get people into this satsang, this conscious community that we are building here at the Infinite Cup. Thank you so much. Wherever you're downloading this music, just thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here. And for those of you who do not know, I have a book available on Amazon called The Real Yoga. You can go in, just type that in and check it out. Read it. It's 108 pages. I get so many questions about yoga and how do I meditate. Everything is in there. You're going to learn about yoga, meditation, and figuring out what path is the best for you so you can really develop a home practice. And without any further ado, guys, here is FleurBrun and I talking all things aliens, ETs, and celestial beings. Aloha. Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again for being here. Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And yeah, just start off with a little introduction about yourself, how all this, happened for you, how everything mystical and spiritual, and just give people the introduction who've never heard about you before, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Why? Thank you. I'm grateful you have me on your platform. I'm always open and receptive to new spiritual liaisons that further solidify our timelines and our frequencies. So I'm appreciative.
Yes.
I'm FleurBrun. Most people know me as FleurBrun online. I'm a Andromedan contactee. I've talked about being part of the quote unquote the spiritual or the UFO and the ET community. From a young girl, I was always basically partially with veil open, meaning my receptivity, my consciousness was always receptive to other forms of awareness that were outside of what normal people would say, is maybe sci-fi or, supernatural. I had an awareness that wasn't normal for most children. Normal more so for starseeds now, but I'm a woman of a certain age. So back then I was more obscure.
Yeah.
Now it's more normal, so I love it. We're in our times right now. So
yes. I hear you on that.
So I've been a part of YouTube for almost 7 years, since 2011, 2012. Basically I came on looking for others who were in the same awareness and had a level of contact with a particular group of extraterrestrials that I had been in contact with from a child. I was also a part of Zeta Talk, which is Nancy Ledge's group as well, which helped solidify and just made everything more rational for me and made me feel less creepy or different in the realm of the regular people living within the matrix. And I've made amazing friends along the way. So many reveals, elevated consciousness that comes along with each level that you meet of different entities that bring you to another pinnacle point of consciousness and awareness. And with, I come from the prepper community too, so I'm a part of that as well. That's probably why John and me get along. So, I'm an agriculturalist. I studied genetics for a long period of time. So a lot of people know me as talking about heredity, blood types, and that and whatnot. So that's a little
Awesome. That's so perfect. Yeah, I completely agree with you. We are definitely living this, ascension, this age of enlightenment, and it's amazing just to see it become popular. It's been a lot of like-minded souls like yourself have been doing the work kind of behind the scenes for a while, but now because of YouTube and this digital world we live in now, it's all on the surface and everybody has access to it. And I hear you on that, and I've been waiting for a long time, and I like how you put that too because it's something that we need the intellect to kind of catch up with some of this stuff because it takes a long time to kind of integrate, what you learn from the other side or these celestial beings. And that's what I kind of wanted to just get down to because you mentioned Andromeda. I mean, Pleiades, Sirius. I feel like a lot of people are like, in tune with that. They just don't know how to, really grasp that knowledge and get it into their everyday waking life, So that would be my first question to you is just something like, how can we bring that into something that is, channeling that to something that's productive into our, normal waking life? Because at the end of the day, the mysticism and the sci-fi, all that stuff is fun and everything. But I think there's real knowledge and information that, people are tapping into that we can use for, I like to say, the highest good of all. And that's exactly what you're doing. And I'm just, first of all, I want to thank you for doing that work because I hear you. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of heart, a lot of understanding just to break that down. And like you said, with those layers that are happening right now with the intellect, it's just really important, in my opinion, to bring that into a practice that really helps your everyday waking life.
Absolutely. And I think as far as regarding ETs and the liaisons between the different galactic groups, all of us have it. I mean, if we take in consideration that in ancient times, we've seen hieroglyphs and even in the Sumerian tablets, we've seen remnants of extraterrestrials, interterrestrials, interdimensionals coexisting in a way that was more permissible, that was more tangible to the average person living on the surface of the planet. So I think within the last couple, maybe 1,000 or so years, a little bit more than that, there's been a little bit of that closing, that conscious awareness of these beings.
Yes.
And we all have their a level of interaction because many of us have been seeded by many of these groups. And that's why some of us have more of a attraction maybe to one particular star system, one type of being that just we feel in tune with, we feel connected to. And I think in later years, as opposed to before, I mean, before it was kind of like you were just a hippie, in my day, it was like, I'm younger than hippies, but I'm saying, it was always likened to thinking, oh, she's so cool. She's just groovy. She's like into, it wasn't as tangible. It was a little exaggerated, and it wasn't that it was legitimate. It was kind of fantasized, like, okay, she thinks she's interacting with ETs, or she has an amazing imagination, or she's very eccentric. But there wasn't a level of actually grasping that there are beings here interacting with us, most using telepathy. It's done on a daily basis. Many of the groups seed their own, meaning they follow family lines, lineage for generations. So, if your grandmother was in contact, you're going to be in contact. Your children will be in contact. Kind of how we breed horses. The grandfather, the grandmother, the lineage. And that's how they interact with us. And that's why certain groups have a certain, I don't want to say love, because they don't have the same emotional state that we would denote as human beings. But they have a connection to their own lineage, to their own genomes. And that's why some of them are very gingerly when interacting with certain beings as opposed to others. Okay? It's almost like having a preference, a personal preference.
Yes. Oh, yes. I know what you mean 1,000%.
I think we've all interacted to a certain lesser or greater degree consciously with these beings. I think that hasn't happened with anyone. They have coexisted here. They've seeded many of our bloodlines. And I think now with us coming on the precipice of 2020, which is basically eyes wide open, this is an I get chills knowing. This is what I spoke about years ago, that this day would come where we would have a level of interaction with our star family, with our cousins, our galactic cousins, in a more tangible, a more solidified way that would allow for us to overstand and understand why this planet has been developed for different species of beings to interact, what level of spiritual evolution we've been undergoing, and to understand what purpose each one of us services to the collective consciousness that is now basically getting up there.
Oh yeah, it's instantaneous now. Yep.
It is. And we're basically going back into unity consciousness, oneness. Everyone has their own different verbiage. Yeah. But we're going back into our collective oneness, going back to our home base. Yep. And this is an amazing time, and I'm grateful to be here.
Awesome. No, I could not agree more. For me, I'm a yoga teacher. Yoga was the only thing that really gave me this path or map to kind of guide through this and understand it without getting too, blown away into all of these beings and ETs and aliens and stuff. Because a lot of judgment, came along with those experiences for me in the beginning, and just getting into the certain texts. I think Barbara Cloud, The Palladian Agenda, was probably the first book that really hit home with me. Yeah, and that was that was in 2011 when I first read that book, and it was something that I literally found it in a dumpster sort of thing. It wasn't like I went to the bookstore to go pick out a book or anything like that. So those serendipitous moments definitely happened in my life, and I agree with you more where those seeds were planted then, and it's only until now where I'm starting to see the fruits develop and actually get something tangible from that instead of this big mystical new age woo-woo stuff. It actually has created a lot of productivity, happiness, love into my life. And that's what I want to share with people with this show is how can we channel this information, because you're right, we're entering this age, this oneness, this unity consciousness is available to us right now. And it's just the way I look at it too is it's our belief systems, right? I feel like every single soul right now has access to this. It's just their belief system that's like holding them back and making them not being able to really fully grasp that information. So for me, it was not until I get into yoga and meditation and cleaning my diet and really purifying myself where I was able to open up the crown chakra and get access to this information. And it's very important. Yeah, that's for me, the prerequisites that kind of need to be done, because I think a lot of people in this community are just talking about it in a very, nonsense kind of way. In my opinion, it's not really tangible information that we can use for this collective. And that's really what I'm all about. How can you channel this into your everyday life that you can use this, right? The message that I get, is very loving at the end of the day. There's a lot of, demystifying that we have to do, right? Because I think Hollywood and sci-fi in general has, turned, yeah, yep. Mm-hmm. 100%. So let's dig into a little, for people that have never heard about this before, talk about Andromeda a little bit, just talk about Palladium, or just, what you're more in tune with. So for somebody who's never heard about this or anything, because I think there's a big separation. I don't even use the word alien or ET. I like the word celestial being, just because we are pure light. We are multi-dimensional spirit souls, and, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. And I think people are basically, just catering to the body, right? They're not even accessing this higher consciousness at all. So it's something that, like you said, we all have the capability of doing. And I love what you mentioned with the family lineage too, because that's so spot on. Whatever you're tapped into, whatever you're drawn to through your desire system is going to be that channel to this particular group. And it's not like we just went from source straight to planet Earth. We definitely have seeds and connections through other galaxies and other things that are happening in this giant cosmos that we're a part of. So just, talk about that for yourself. How, why, Andromeda, and how did that all happen for you?
As a little girl, my family is from Martinique, which is a French island, and St. Lucia by way of South America. So it's quite a journey. So as a little girl, I would have from about one, my mother denoted that when I would sleep, my eyes would stay open. So she noticed that every time she'd put me down in my crib or my little bed, that my eyes would always drift upward. So she immediately went to the pediatrician and said, "Oh, my daughter has issues. She's not able, her eyes aren't closing. It's a little creepy because it's scary to see her eyes drifting back and forth." The doctor says, "Well, most likely it's her eye muscles are very, very, weak. And that's probably the reason why she's drifting back. She's unable to close her eyes fully in sleep wake." Now, from one on, I had memories of seeing beautiful dreadlock brown sisters in the ceiling that would look over me, especially one would always watch over me. And I remember seeing her kind of piercing out, well, as if the ceiling didn't exist, kind of piercing through the ceiling and kind of just lingering over me. Not so much, it didn't look like she was floating. It looked like she was on something, but I could, at the time, I didn't know what that was.
Mhm.
I just remembered a woman always watching over me in my crib. And if I go to school, I would see her sometimes at a vegan, it was so crazy, like the one vegan tea house that we opened in Auburn, New York. She would always be lingering outside of there and watching me.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I realized at maybe 10 or 11 when my father bought me a book on, I think it was UFOs, because that's the time ET, I'm a woman of a certain age, so we had ET come out,
Yeah.
I think roughly around that time. He bought me a book, my dad worked in Manhattan, bought me a book about celestial interaction with starseeds. Don't know why, he just decided, he thought it was such a book, he felt like reading the back, he felt like it really was something that I would relate
Mhm.
to. He felt like I was connected to that. And after skimming through the book, because I was, I'm a Sagittarius, I just skimmed through. I didn't really read through. I didn't have that attention span quite then. But I listened to the bits and pieces at the time. I read it later. And I realized that the being that I was in contact with was a celestial being that was from another star system. Now, when she would actually telecommunicate with me and denoted, there wasn't a separation. This is why I say we're not ever separated from them,
Exactly.
because they are our ancestors. Actually,
Yeah.
they consider me to be their grandmother. They call me grandmother
Oh.
because I'm their ancestor.
Mhm.
And as she would always denote to me that we left, she would always say, we left, grandmother. We left, but we're back. We'll come back at a particular time. Now, what she denoted is that they left during actually before the last cataclysm of 2012.
Got it.
There were a group, it was on this planet used to be queendoms, not so much kingdoms, queendoms. It
Mhm.
used to be a matriarchal planet. Mother Earth is a female. She hosted female, androgynous women, ambiguous women that were both, were able to give birth through the process of parthenogenesis. These women ruled all over the planet, but they had their hierarchy. During the time when the cataclysm, when the great time would come, the exodus would happen. They were aware of this previous. Not everyone on the planet was aware, but there were only those in the higher forms, consciousness and awareness, that were aware. So when they were aware of this, they did their exodus to the inner earth through channels, through South America. There's one particular place over by I think it's called Irrigana Falls. They went to the inner caverns of the earth and found themselves a stargate, which the only way that they could pass, they were permitted to pass through the stargate, is by having a specific genome that was only for certain beings that were coexisting here. And with that specific DNA, that code, that key in the genomes, they were allowed to exit into the Andromedan star system. And many of us have this story, like bits and pieces of the Mayans, because people say, oh, the Mayans disappeared. They didn't disappear.
Yeah.
They actually left before the pole shift of last time, and they entered into the Andromedan star system, which many beings coexist there. The Andromedan star system hosts many different beings, many different celestial families. They are one, and they are not native. They are native earthlings that entered into the star system and befriended a group of insectilians to this day that they work and they war with. Now, when I was denoted that there would be a time that they would come back, as one thing the Great Mother said, she would come back at a particular time at 2012, again, in our time frame.
Yeah.
But I, being more being conditioned to think that 2012 was according to the Gregorian calendar, thought they would come back 7 years ago. It was according to the Hebrew calendar, the Jewish calendar, that they would come back, which just happened this week, actually, just a couple of days ago.
Oh, wonderful. There we go.
And at this time, they would come back, and many different beings, actually the quarantine would be over, the Arcturians, Pelagian groups, would come back and start having tangible interactions at that point with their star families to prepare them and to get them to prepare their macabre to engage in the way that the world will be shifting. Mother Earth is doing her ascension. The planet is about to do her cleanse, as she always does. And that is what we consider to be the pole shift, which happens roughly every 3,600 years. So these women have always been a part of my life. They train other women to be warriors. They are amazing. They look similar to me, dreadlocks, which is amazing. Beautiful coils. Their hierarchy is based on usually gold. The gold is usually somewhat of a higher hierarchy. Sometimes they have like the pine cones in their hair, and colors depending on what tier of fighting, or if they're soldiers, or if they're just basically those worker bees that work within the line of the tribe.
Yeah.
So these women have come back. They've actually made their exodus back to Earth, and now they're on Mother Terra once again.
Awesome. That's so cool. I love the full story, and that's good. I'm happy you mentioned with the different calendars too and the different system, because again, it's those belief systems, right? I feel like, the bigger powers that be here, whether it's government or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just they knew all this stuff, and they're, created something to kind of keep us in the corral. And because of the internet and all these digital things happening right now, the information's out there. So I think at the end of the day, this is exciting time to be alive. And I remember 2012 too. It's like even all of that stuff, they put there's always, some fear or whatever they want to spin on it, right? Just to keep it all into that mumbo jumbo pile. And the reality, there's something you can, learn from this, and you have to take the work, and do the work to undo all of that programming. So that's something that I just, want to appreciate you for doing that. And this is something that's very, normal to me. And I just, for people listening and stuff, it's something that I can totally relate with. But for someone who's, like, again, never heard about this or anything, how would someone get in contact with, Andromeda or Pleiades? Like, what would one person do who's never, even thought about this before, but they're definitely interested, right? See, that's the thing that I get questions, I'm sure you do too, is there's a sincere like interest in this. It's just there's no like tangible approach. For me, if I were to answer the question, I would say meditation. But I'm curious, for you, what does that look like? Yeah.
I believe there's different doors and different avenues to each to the interaction with different celestial families.
Yes.
And generally they will find you if you're seeded from the particular group. And seeded doesn't mean only genetics, meaning seeded hybrid. It also means energetic, because sometimes we come in. And I love Dolores Cannon. Big up to Dolores Cannon, who wrote Convoluted Universe, which is an amazing book. If anyone's ever read it, talks about the volunteers that have come here from other solar systems, that have basically chosen to come here at this particular time, pinnacle time on Earth, to allow and to assist with the ascension process. Yeah. So first of all, I think meditation is phenomenal, allowing yourself, but also be very focused and make sure that you only allow beings that are in your frequency, that are here for the betterment of Mother Earth and Tiamat, because there are many beings who will interact with one. And if we don't specify the verbiage that allows for a specific energy to interact with us, we will be susceptible to having others that will utilize your naivety to interact with you, and then basically feed you things that are partial truths, but meant to put you on a path of another, on their.
Oh yeah, I can relate with that. I can confess that's happened to me at something where I, open myself up to this, and you have to understand that it's, a doorway on both sides, right? And it's something when you get a lot of people, I think it's just because of our, our human conditioning and our just the fact that our, normal waking life isn't conducive for the soul. And I understand that, and people want to, exit whatever that is for them, whether it's drugs, alcohol, anything. And I think when we do that, we are opening ourselves up to these dimensions and entities that we might not know about. And that's, happened to me in the past. And I've had, stuff that I can't even talk about because people would just call me crazy, and yeah, it's something that I've learned from that. And what I mean is, it was just like you said, a very naive mistake. And yes, I was sincere in wanting to reach, higher consciousness in these things, but I definitely opened the doorway to some things that were negative, and I had to shut it, right away. So, and that almost created a trauma for me, where I had to, back off all of this stuff for a few years to really, integrate that experience before I was even receptive again. So thank you for, talking about that, because it's true. You are definitely opening yourself up, whether it's meditation or these techniques that we're talking about, crystals, all these portals, right, that can allow us to enter higher consciousness. We need to be very mindful about the specific, I like you said verbiage too, because I love studying conscious language, and that's really what it comes down to, is using your language. And the fact that we are multidimensional, these celestial beings are, we have the advantage, is what I like to say, because we have access, right? We can do it on different dimensions. Exactly. And they're, celestial. They don't have the actual, meat suit that we do. So they are limited to that dimension, and that's it. So that's all they can do. Sure, they can access in different ways, but I'm just telling people that are listening, like, we have the power here. We have the ultimate power. So that's something that, going into this, that's really where I would, kind of start, because a lot of people are, giving their power away, to other things, and it's unnecessary. Yeah.
We are the end all be all as far as having a physicality. Non-corporeal beings and corporeal beings, there's a difference. Having more corporeal form gives you an advantage on all different layers.
Yes.
So important to know that and accept your sovereignty in that way, because they want to be where you are.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of times they hijack a lot of bodies doing
Yeah.
that. And it's very important to remain conscious of the type of chemicals that you interact with. You know,
Yes.
I always talk to my young sea stars. I call my young sea stars and my sun stars, and I tell them it's very important to be mindful of using elixirs like we call it in French punch, liquor.
Yeah.
I think it's a liquor,
Yeah.
and also any form of illicit drugs that would allow portals or your accessibility to your first eye.
Yes.
Because those types of elixirs or chemicals have been altered with frequencies.
Yes.
People don't realize, you know, they drink Hennessy or they drink vodka or I guess Kvassia is Hennessy, a type of Kvassia. I don't know some of the English words for some of the liquors, because that's old. I'm an old school French person, so that's, you know, Kvassia. So, but each one has a particular type of entity that's connected to it.
Yes.
That's why people who drink vodka, doesn't matter what color, what background they're from, they usually have same physical symptoms and same entity attached to it. It's a frequency of beings. Yeah. When we drink, our ancestors used to know that wine and spirits, when you engage with it, you have a designated thought and goal in mind. And we know that I may want to talk to Grandpa Fred, who is amazing, and I desire intel and interaction. So when I engage with this elixir, I'm utilizing myself and designating it to only interaction with my own lineage. Yes. And we need to be more mindful. And food is a drug also. Yes. Eating foods that are dense, GMO, chemically homogenized is how they've basically created zombies in our world.
100%.
Food is a muter. It mutes your sensory. It also alters your DNA, makes you more susceptible to mind control. And then you have the layering of AI interaction now with the nanobots and nanotubes, which are replicated along with the chemtrails, that if you aren't mindful of the food that you consume, the thoughts in your head, make sure they're your thoughts, then you have to be mindful to keep from being susceptible for any infiltration outside of that. So food, places, people, and things. It's the same thing they tell alcoholics. Food, what is it? People, places, and things are just as important. Be mindful of the things you consume in your body. Be mindful of the frequency that you consume and the things you hear, audio, visually, and be very mindful of the interactions that you have in liaisons, physically, sexually, with anybody.
Yes. 100%. Yes. And for me, like I said earlier, for me, yoga has been that, path for me, just to like give me some guidelines for all of that. And it's all in there, every path, whether, Christianity is probably the biggest one right now. That's the most popular. I'm just saying, like, whether it's the 10 commandments or, in yoga, it's the yama and niyamas, talking about non-violence, non-stealing, non-greed, all of those. It's like, this is, like I said, these prerequisites that you need to, stay in line with. Otherwise you're falling into temptation for this, darkness is what I would just call it, because we all kind of have those seeds, right? We have those seeds within us, but the question is, are you watering those seeds with your actions, proper actions that are going to produce the fruit that you want? And unfortunately, a lot of people are, eating the GMO foods and hybridized things and the chemtrail. Like for me, I'm in Hawaii right now. I've traveled to Alaska. Like I do a lot of work to put myself in a very pure, environment to, get away from that stuff, and not in a, not in a bad way or anything. It's just because I understand, I'm aware. I don't want to, be involved with that. I just had my first son who just turned 4 months old, and I'm like, he's amazing, and I want to be that example for him. You know what I mean? Like, we really got to be the light, and it's something that I don't want him breathing that toxic air or having the chemical food and blah blah. And to me, that's the norm now. That's like what that's the majority, right? I mean, it's scary.
It's what they've accepted. If you accept, if you're limited awareness, heightened awareness puts you at the higher point of existence where you can see panoramically. And you can engage with a sense of free will with all sights and senses aware and awake. That is our goal. Yes. Most have been conditioned, programmed through trauma-based programs, MK Ultra, public MK Ultra programs via television, governmental systems of inception from pesticides, and also inoculations from birth, which I am an advocate of non-inoculations. And even with my Andromedan I call her my mother, but I'm her grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Even with, and I'll show a picture of the actual divine mother that has been in contact with me, that was an earthling, the Mayan empress. They inoculated themselves. They were, around many different types of snakes in order to make themselves non-susceptible to being poisoned. They inoculated themselves. I think the indigenous created natural inoculations, not to be infiltrated by AI technology and eugenics programs that were created to dumb down children and to hijack their brains and make them susceptible to being androids or, biobots. So it's totally different. I'm not against nature's way to inoculate, like getting bitten from a mosquito. That's your inoculation. Okay. We don't talk about that, but as working in the scientific field, we know that those are nature's way to inoculate you. Eating a fruit in your local area from your local tree that is getting the same wonderful cues from nature and builds all these wonderful antes to anything unnatural, then you consume it. That's your inoculation.
Yep, 100%.
That's healthy.
Yeah, I thank you for mentioning that. It's huge because I feel like people talk about this, but it's all about making those connections with the dots. A lot of people, I feel like, understand, organic or things like that. And this is way more than just your health, with your body, right? That's the thing. This is the, like I said earlier, we are spiritual beings having this human experience, and I'm catering to that light body. I'm thinking, how can I, get my vibration higher? How can I expand? How can I help people just throw that ladder down? I say, come on, let's do this. Because like I said, I see it all the time. Like I see like what you're talking about. Like I see those limitations on people, I see those belief patterns, I see the conditioning, and all I want to do is just like shake them, and like, hey, this is not okay, and that's what I'm saying. I feel like in my world, at least, like we live in a time where there's just no more excuses. You know what I mean? Like there's plant-based options everywhere. There's certain things. There's like all this stuff that we're talking about is readily available now. It's not something, that is hard to do anymore.
But also we have to take in consideration, we've made soul contracts previous to coming here, and everyone's lessons are different. So though we have well intentions to see and we empathize for our fellow earthling, we do, but we must understand that each one of us goes through our adversity in order to chip away layers of limitation that comes from time and time again incarnating with trauma, or again, there's an agenda here, and we aren't supposed to incarnate like that. We choose to based on being locked in a grid system, and that has to do with other beings that have also incepted into our earth realm, manipulating how our soul chooses to leave and enter. So if we understand that every being here has chosen to be here, there aren't any victims on earth. Every person is engaging in the way that is desired by them, detailed and blueprint by their soul, their oversoul, in order to gain wisdom and consciousness. And I make sure that when a horse is ready to drink, you won't ever have to force her. She will come right through the water.
Yes. Thank you for saying that too. Because I get, it's important not to compare, right? Like you're saying, we all have this unique individual journey and we are all one at that level. It's just understanding that is huge. Thank you for reminding me, because that's something that I just do. It's hard not to do. It's like just the empathy within me, the empath that wants to help others. And it's something that's probably the hardest thing to practice with non-attachment and everything, is just letting people find that path from within. For me, even, they're coming to me now. I mean, that's for sure. Like, just because of, like I said, I don't know whether this got popular recently or how it happened, or what I think it is just the toxicity and the pharmaceutical, all that stuff has gotten so bad that people are just searching for different things, right? And something as simple as cannabis or whatever is, finally starting to, get some light shed on it as far as something positive, and like as far as scientific research or whatever that thing is that people need to get them over the edge and in order to understand this, as far as something that's helpful. I'm like you when it comes to I just believe in nature. So if anything that is from the earth, it's going to be here to help us. And it's something that once you get into chemicals and things, that's where it gets a little iffy. I'm not saying there's no potential there. I'm just saying that's where it gets a little iffy in the sense of what can happen with the results that you're getting from it. So for me, if it's coming from nature, there's something to learn from that, and that's been here for millions of years. And it's just a matter, I like to say, like tools on our tool belt. How many tools do you have to access this different state of consciousness or whatever you're trying to do to channel that energy back to planet Earth so we can use it for the highest good of all.
Remember, the first doctors were the mothers. You know,
Yes.
the first doctors in the household were the mothers.
Mhm.
They were the ones who knew to go, you know, in the islands, you know, we know to go to sea moss when there's a cut.
Yes.
We know how to pack some clay in it, a little bit of sea salt, sand, put it on the wound, and we know it clears within 2 to 3 days.
Yes.
That's divine medicine.
Yes.
They they've interceded. Now they've used our nature to make and to geoengineer a way to chemicalize it and to take away from its natural form. Nature doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
There isn't anything that we require. Animals are born as they should. There isn't any manual. I don't see a deer needing a manual to be a
Nope.
deer, right?
Mm-mm.
Mothers in their natural form will mother and nurse.
Yeah.
Fathers will protect, guide, and build. That is how we were built.
Yeah.
And we're perfected when we are incepted. So once we gain that wisdom that we are okay as we are, there isn't any flaw in the genome other than us eating things that are flawed and created to hurt us, we'll be fine.
I agree completely. For me, it wasn't until I got to Alaska, and as far as like learning from nature, that's where I probably learned the most as far as motivating me. Because like what you're saying, I see it with bears, right? The little cubs are following mama. It's everything, whether it's a chicken, doesn't matter. But I'm just saying you can really see it with bears, and they're with them for years, right? And that's what we're not doing in our human existence here. We are disconnected from nature. So I look at it, how can we bring those things into nature? Because I can learn so much from just watching a bear in the wild or a squirrel or whatever, and that's honestly where I get more information than I ever did in the public school system or blah, blah, blah. You know, it's something that we all have the capability to do.
And many talk about the pole shifts. I remember during the time when everything started to go a little awry, you know,
Yeah.
because I've been in this world and in this consciousness for a long period of time in my happy bubble. I'm grateful. And when it was time and there were questions and a little bit of concern that the environment and the pole shift was coming, I said, what are you afraid of? I said, you won't have to go to work. Your mortgage won't have to be paid. All those card games that you wanted to play, you can sit down and talk to your neighbors for once.
Yeah.
You guys can actually relax and just watch the sun up and sun down.
Mm-hmm.
What about the cataclysm? What makes you think you're going to go through a cataclysm? If you project that, then it means you will own that.
Yeah.
You inner world creates your outer world. As long as you know it's all good in the hood, that's exactly how it will be.
I agree 100%. It's all about your belief systems and what you're intact to. What are you putting energy into? And like I said, most people are just catering to the body, catering to their senses, you know, the small self, the ego. It's very a shallow approach, you know, and it's something that whatever practice, you know, for me, it was meditation, really getting into these transcendental states where I, you know, understand that and I had these experiences that you just can't deny, you know, and I think that's what it is at the end of the day, the experiential learning, you know, it's something you can't learn in a book or anything. It's something that you have to bring, you know, that information here and, you know, help others, whether it's sacred geometry or anything. Like we're all, you know, learning that path right now as far as what that means in order to be guided through this. And it's just exciting.
It is. And if someone's having trouble, I always say, like I did the 30-day water fast. I'm a little bit of a thickums though, so I have a little cushion to be able to do it. Yeah. But I found that before I went to Brazil for the month, I went through a 30-day water fast and the clarity was nothing like you could ever believe. The muters that even I, as a mother, I make sure I'm non-GMO 99% of my house. I grow a lot of my own food. It didn't matter. I was still being infected by the food that I was consuming. And I didn't realize it. It wasn't after I'd done fast before. It wasn't until after maybe the 15th. Oh, goodness. Hold on. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No worries.
Oh. That's weird. The phone rang. Okay. It wasn't until after the 15th day that the lights were brighter. My ancestors, the codons that are locked in, because that's what vaccinations are for, to lock down the truth, the actual knowledge, the infinite knowledge that's in your genomes, that your ancestor, grandfather, he knew how to hunt. Mm-hmm. He knew how to walk through the woods. He knew what to do. All of the ancestors are in you, but it's locked down. 15th day, the codons were popping. Intel coming through. Ancestors speaking to me. And that's when I booked my trip to Brazil, because my family had originally come from the top of the rainforest in Brazil at one point. And when I went there and realized that they were there, and all the time I had all of the information in me, I didn't need anyone.
Yeah.
This whole time, I didn't need a book. I didn't need a guru. I didn't need a card reading. I didn't need a crystal. Every bit of information from the time my family had been on this earth was already in me.
Yeah,
just like
beautiful.
Dorothy. Just like Dorothy. And it wasn't until I did the 30-day fast, it was humbling. It was beautiful. I don't say it's for everyone, but just a little fast will give you a taste of the clarity that's necessary in order to overstand, understand, and interact in a higher field.
Yes, I agree 100%. Yes, for anybody who's called to do that, please do it. It's something I've done plenty of fasts myself, and I completely relate with you. Like I said, for me, it's yoga. All this is talked about in yoga. Any system, whether it's yoga or any Eastern or even South America, Machu Picchu, all of these, the Incan civilization, every person on the planet has that approach, right? And the way that I look at it is it's that cosmic view, because we have been on this planet for a very long time, and those hunter-gatherer DNA, that's all within us, and we would go months in the winter without eating, and that was just a part of life. And now it's just because of fast food and things where that idea of a water fast is all extreme or whatever. But you're 100% right, hit the nail on the head. I could not agree with you more. That's a lot of the things that are created right now is because of the toxicity within our body. That's why I'm a detox specialist. I talk a lot about that, and it's something that even the third eye, the pineal gland is so calcified. There's so many things that are locked in with ourselves that we need to detox first, and then all of this information will actually make sense to you. And it's something like even whether, they have it, I believe, in ayahuasca ceremonies and different things where people, they even do it as a prerequisite for that, right? It's like, oh, you should sustain from salt and meat and these things. And it's like, I live that diet like 24/7 for like 10, 11 years now, So it's something that, like I said, is for me, if those prerequisites are done, then this information that we're talking about, these techniques are a lot easier. There's something it's a lot more tangible. You can access this information, and this is our genuine, like, natural state. It's not something that before, and it's something that you totally have access to, and you just need the proper, set and setting to kind of create that space for you, right? Because obviously in Brazil, when you can do it with a setting that's a little more conducive for that versus being in your natural responsibilities of life and all of that. So that's an important thing to note just while we're on the subject of fasting, because and for me, it's juice fasting. Like, I love juice, right? And that's something where people, just getting away from the solids, actually, in general, because once you start getting the juice, you're still getting a lot of nutrition, and it won't be as jarring as a water fast, but you'll get similar results. And just having that experience alone will awaken, these biophotons, these light, because that's the thing, the energy is coming from the sun, right, into these plants and fruits, and we need to access that information into our cells, because we're light cells too, we're biophotons, and that's the thing. You're not going to get that from another, being, from eating meat or whatever. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So
produces death,
Yes.
especially trauma along with it. So
Yes.
even the ancestors, and even an accessing point of reference to ancestors, they didn't kill all the time, and meat was a treat once in a blue, and they honored the animal. The slay was consumed within that same period of time. There was a lot of rituals involved in it. The way that people consume meat is almost like they go to the bathroom. It's the same way that it's so disregarding, it's so disrespectful to the life. And I always say, consume your food the way that you would have if something was engaging with you in that way, to the same level of respect. If you can't go out and hunt, if you can't see that animal and slay it, then perhaps you shouldn't be consuming it. If you can, by all means, hunting, I'm not against it, as long as it's for consumption and for family, for personal family usage, like our ancestors used to do. But as far as mass consumption of meat, that is why a lot of us are dense in our mind patterns. And the trauma of the animal is actually what happens with people. A lot of depression, bipolar disorder. I think it's linked to consuming animals that have been traumatized and also genetically homogenized.
100%. Yeah. For me, it was I could, tell you a story of this particular meditation where, even I would go further and say anxiety, that was a lot of my anxiety. A lot of the things that I was feeling wasn't coming from me, and it was coming from the things I was consuming, and I had to connect those dots. And once you have that aha moment, it's like you can't go back. It's just not possible. And I've lived what you're saying too. In Alaska, obviously there's people there that I've lived with, and family and friends that I love there that, don't know what cows taste like. They don't have no idea what what that factory farm thing is at all. They just live a very self-sufficient lifestyle, and it's night and day from what I've experienced in the lower 48. And it's like, it's still out there, and that's what was my sincere goal back in 2009, just really, trying to find a place here on earth where people are still intact with the land and intact with that, natural state. I mean, I'm not like a Native American as far as living on the tribe or anything. I'm just saying as a whole state, I feel like people in Alaska really get it. And I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying because of the land. I'm just big as far as environment, right? Because a lot of the programming, a lot of the things that we are conditioned into is based on our environment. Like right now with 5G, right? A lot of these invisible warfare is happening as we speak, because it's gone from physical things, from our food, our air, our water, into this invisible spectrum now because of technology and the power that it has. And if you think, that it's for your Netflix speeds and for faster downloads, you got another thing coming. It is really amazing how they can, infiltrate us in such a deep level. And yet at the same time, people just, are mindless. And I have no judgments here. I'm like you. For me, it wasn't until my grandmother passing away where I really had to understand, oh, it's all beautiful. What I'm saying is that for lesson for me was, it has to come from within. That's what it is. It has to come from within. There is no other way. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? Like a analogy we were using earlier. And she was suffering for a very long time, and it was something that I could, I know how to juice, I know how to do all these things nutritionally to help her, but she didn't want nothing to do with it. Then.
Some of the elders can be really stuck in patterns.
Yes.
Remember, these are the cylindrical patterns that were purposefully propelled into our environment, and our elders were suffering from a lot of the Stockholm syndrome of patterns of behavior that they just felt were conducive to the way that they lived. And, it's beautiful, but it's also tragic, because in itself, you as her grandson are she birthed you into existence. Because remember, when she carried your mother, she also, is this your father's mother?
It's my mother's mother.
Yes.
Okay, so when she carried your mother, she was also carrying you.
Yes.
That's what we know as the indigenous. So she carried you as well.
Yes.
So she birthed, look what she birthed.
Oh, I'm so thankful. And during that experience, I was having a lot of astral projections, and I was hanging out with her in the astral realm. She wanted to go, it was something that we were in contact through the astral realm when she would leave her body. And she was she had multiple sclerosis, and she was very obese, like 400 pounds. And when she left her body and we were traveling together at night during our dream state, she was not that body. She was showing me a very specific thing about all of the things that she, her beautiful moments of when she was in her most peak and performance and everything. And she was showing me all of these wonderful things. And I'm just very grateful for like my meditation practice and the things that I do, because if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have been able to access this, place to be able to commune with her. And I could tell she was suffering in a way that, the people around her couldn't understand. And it was her every day leaving her body just to be free from all of those.
That's freedom from the chattel. Yeah.
Yes.
From the physical, especially when it starts to get hampered.
Yes.
That is a way, a lot of times, because before they pass, like my dad, they take little walks. I remember my dad walking in the house before he passed in the hospital. My mom said, I saw him walking in the house, same way he walks in the hallway all the time. Mm-hmm. They practice because they get used to being outside of the body that isn't any longer. We're not supposed to, everything in life is supposed to change. Part of being in this existence is accepting that anything that stays still is going to atrophy.
Yes.
We're supposed to be perpetually changing, evolving, moving, and in the flow of things. So it's beautiful in itself. You were able to experience.
Oh, so much. I am beyond grateful for that. And that's what, saved me for a lot of depression and everything. Because like you said earlier, it's, on the surface, like you were talking about when you were, 1 year old and your mom was talking with sleeping with your eyes open. It's like on the surface, there's fear and like you want to have some label and diagnose and like, oh, what's going on? And there's genuine, sensational help there. But at the end of the day, there's something always behind the scenes that's happening, right? And if you can just take that moment, take that deep breath and get into, like I said, the cosmic view, you can understand what's happening behind the scene instead of just, paying attention to what's on the surface. Because 9 times out of 10, it's not what's happening on the surface at all. It's not your muscles in your eyes. There's something much bigger happening there. Yeah.
Remember, everything spiritual is connected to the physical. And even what I've learned with Dr. One of my amazing teachers was everything that is happening physically is always connected to something spiritual. So when we aren't I have to watch my words because I make sure I keep negation. So when you see me pull back the negations, I know they aren't in existence. So I make sure I stay away from using them.
Yes.
So if you see me doing that, it's
I do the same thing. I get it.
Yes.
So when we have something that is unresolved in our mind or our spirit, it will, if it is unresolved long enough, it will manifest into a physical symptom and then into an ailment and sometimes into a disease.
Yeah.
So, and it's just dis-ease. That's all it is. So if we understand that if your feet are hurting and you're unable to walk, your foundation is being you're something about your foundation isn't sturdy. There's something that needs to be resolved in how you feel about maybe work or maybe how the foundation of the family is. You know, if your lower back is hurting, it's connected to financial woes or concerns about, you know, abundance. You know, these are all linked to us spiritually, everything like as above, so below, as within, so without. We have to be mindful that we can remedy things on all layers. If you remedy the spirit and the mind, then you can remedy the physicality that comes out with the atrophy that comes from you unresolving some issue.
100%. 100%. Thank you for bringing that up too. And that's why I created my channel, you know, The Infinite Cup, because I mean, I'm big into health and I love the genetics and veganism. All that stuff is wonderful, but that's just one part. And for me, it wasn't until, you know, being a meditation teacher and teaching yoga, like the spirit is where the energy needs to be put, is what I'm getting to, right? Because it's so much easier. Like take the back pain, for example. We've all been through this as far as some degree. And it's like, what are you going to do? Go to the chiropractor for the rest of your life? You know, are you going to have that? You know, that's what I'm saying. You can address it on the surface, or you can dig a little bit deeper and go all the way to that spiritual plane and address it where it's happening. And I like I said, I see this every day on people, whether I'm at the grocery store or whatever. I see these layers and these conditioning, and it's something where I just want to help people because I can understand that it's not that back pain, it's not that trauma that you're talking about. There's something much deeper happening there. For me, it's the same thing. I when I feel that financial debt or something, I feel it right there, even deeper to my kidneys and adrenal. I feel the whole thing. And with my fiance and her grandma and stuff, I feel like in general it's women too, which the shoulders, right? Carrying people's weight, right?
Much weight on your shoulders. That's the first thing. And get it when it's first. I always say address things before it becomes a condition.
Yes.
We have to, we've gotten accustomed to muting with drugs, alcohol, food, and then we don't feel the symptoms anymore. So we can't resolve it because now we've numbed the symptoms, the very thing that's supposed to tell us, okay, you know, I'm thirsty now. My mouth is dry. So now you have mouth sprays or all these, you know, alternate types of medications or muters that disallow you from actually going to the core and the root. The root is where everything is. The tree, there is, if I see a tree that is moldy or decaying, I can basically diagnose it based on the roots. Maybe the roots are infected with some sort of virus or some sort of parasite. It's always the root of everything. If we go to the root, the remedy is right around the corner.
Yep, 100%. I love that. And I completely relate with that. And like I said, it's like just address the spiritual component, just address those roots in the first place, and you're going to save yourself a lot of suffering and time. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure you've experienced it, but I've left this earth, and this body, this tangible is nothing less than a miracle. And we need to act fast when it comes to having this body and doing the work, the inner work that we're here to do. Because at the end of the day, that's the miracle. That's the, answer that I get every single time I make contact or do certain things. It's like, no, the magic is here, right here on planet Earth. And it's not something you need to, get your power and get your energy outside of yourself. I think a lot of people are under that misconception, and it's something that, like I said, I get that message all the time. And whether these experiences are ecstatic and great and all, it's just at the end of the day, we have to circle back into this waking life and what you're here to do. And as soon as I made that switch, oh my gosh, it was like, so much productivity and, connecting those dots and these aha moments. And then it's like you're actually paddling, going with the flow instead of paddling upstream, and I feel like a lot of people are just paddling upstream trying to get by. And it's, that hustle, this mentality, it's just got to go,
Do you remember that saying that we all grew up with? The harder you work, what is it? Make sure you have to work harder, you get more if you work harder. That's actually a lie. It's actually the inverted. The path of least resistance is the path that is designated for you.
Yes. 100%.
When you experience delays or stoppage, that is a denotion that path isn't the path. That's your oversoul, their higher self is chosen and said, listen, no, sir, no, this is not where there's a blocker
Yep.
there.
Yep.
You know, that's the blocker. We've been trained with, and this is why I say that's the diabolical infiltration. These conditioning, these matrix conditions that have made it almost impossible for those who are in the lower layers of consciousness to supersede and even see above the layering effect of how things go, because there's limitations in even the verbiage or these sayings that keep people stuck.
100%.
Like religions, dogma religions are fabulous. I think all of them have gems.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Mm-hmm.
They do.
Yeah,
I tell
100%.
people all the time, if there wasn't religion, we'd have anarchy. Those are the beginning stages of spirituality if we did not have them. So we don't criticize someone's point of reference, because at the end of the day, we all go to one. So where you begin and where you end is one and the same.
I agree 100%. I look at it like the evolution of the soul, right? It's not the, Darwinian evolution. It's just, we all, some people like to call it old souls, young souls. We all know people that are, very much adults, but they're acting like children in whatever, actions they are, and vice versa, kids that it's just like, wow, how did you figure that out? So I think people are connecting that, for me, it's easy to understand with yoga and reincarnation and things like that. I mean, I don't need to start spitting a bunch of Sanskrit or anything. I just, at the end of the day, it's very easy. It's very common sense to me just to understand that. So I think people that are listening, it's just, we're all picking up where we left off. That's really what it is. And I love the saying too, we're all only remembering, this is nothing new here, right? Those timelines that you're talking about, in yoga, they're called yugas. It's like the system, and it's very easy, like I said, for me, because like I said, yoga is just the lineage. That's what I tapped into, because I think people would just need this guideline, whatever that might be for them, in order to pursue, this path. And whatever, I just tell people, whatever resonates with you. It doesn't have to be yoga. It just has to be a technique that is transcendental, getting you out of the body, getting you away from these limitations. We can call it 3D, entering 5D, whatever, you want to call it, type of thing. It's just, there has to be a practice that you have to develop in order to, like I said, those tools on the tool belt. What are you using in order to access these states and gain information? Otherwise, we're just doing this, it's called samsara, this dance, right, on earth over and over again. And it gets pretty exhausting. Yeah, cool. Well, just curious. So we mentioned Andromeda, and obviously that's what you're tied to, the lineage. I would say, just for people listening, the big, top 3 or anything is also the Palladians. I feel like a lot is happening right now, especially just with Palladians, and I can contest to that. A lot of the things that I'm channeling and doing has to do with Palladian energy, with technology, and this just general ascension, and this age of Aquarius, whatever you want to call it. And then the other one that comes to mind is Sirian. So from the star cluster Sirius. So just break that down a little bit for people who are new to this, and because I feel like once people hear those words, like little sparks happen, right? Little things happen, and it's like you just have to follow those dots and follow the breadcrumbs, and then before you know it, you have this moment, and it's like, wow, I need to integrate this into my life, and then that's when the upgrades start happening, and then it just doesn't stop, because that intuition, that voice, needs to be awakened, and a lot of people aren't using that as a practice. They're listening to the small self, listening to the ego that's always tied to senses and sense gratification, right? It's not giving them the opportunity to, access this higher consciousness. So for me, the way that I look at it, whether it's Palladian, Andromeda, whatever, those beings are around us 24/7. And it's something that, are you paying attention, right? Are you listening to those messages? Are you allowing yourself to really, accept what's happening right in front of you?
Yes. Palladians are actually opening up the doorways of higher layers of consciousness. They've been doing that for a long time. That's why most in the collective consciousness have always felt kin to the Pelagians, different versions. I love some of the elders in Australia that actually have a remembrance of their connection. The Aboriginal have their connection. Ulika, I think his name is Ulika. I was in contact with one of the elders. He's a really cool man, being rather, and talks about the remembrance of the interaction of their star family from the Pleiades, and also talking about them allowing and bringing in the frequency of awareness and awakening. Basically, a lot of times with the Pleiadians, they have the way of giving. They do a lot of our synchronicities are coming through the Pleiadians. Okay, so when you have a thought and it shows up, it's not just our heightened awareness, it is them allowing the doorways to be open leaving pierces on the veil. They do that masterfully. The Pelagians have been here for a long period of time. They have made waves. They have a galactic alliance with many of the other benevolent groups that are here in alignment with the betterment of Mother Tiamat. They are part of her celestial team. She has also gone through her levels and layers of awakening. And the Pelagians are one of the major groups, the major players in the group of allowing her healthiness. Actually, they actually are the ones that opened a little more airway to the elemental realms, which are the pixies, the fairies, the gnomes. Many of our family know and are having more heightened awareness with dreams, especially our little ones. Our little ones are coming through now from those elemental realms, who have a lot of that pixie energy, that elemental energy, because they are the connectors of Earth. They are the cultivators of nature. So a lot of these offspring are being seeded, and the Pelagians have made a way so that piercing could happen, and that's allotted right now. So I love their interaction. So a lot of times if you hear people talking about pixies, or they more so talk about the fairy realm, because the fairies are very, and Edgar Casey, who I love, and in my past life I had a connection. I have a remembrance of being there as a little girl in Edgar Casey's home. I remembered it even when I went for the first time in Virginia Beach. And it's amazing. And I was in contact with the whales and the mermaids. Anyway, that's another story. But they had pictures of some of the fairies that were in the garden, beautiful garden. So if anyone's in Virginia Beach or ever gets a chance to go to the Edgar Casey Institute, I would always suggest it. Some magical, amazing people work there. They were able to assist a lot of us. We went to a wonderful seminar, and it was magical. There were fairies in the garden. We had interaction with many different people who had connections to that realm, that elemental realm, including myself. So I think if anyone's feeling touched by fairy dust or that connection to the elemental realm, that is one of the major places I would go to in that way. Now, the Syrians have a different directive. Now, they're working on the higher levels of really battling and making sure that we aren't overwhelmed by the negatives. They're not, I wouldn't call them warriors, but they hold a stronger stance than more so, I think, the Pelagians. They do.
I agree.
And I think they disallow from a lot of those lower field energies to keep, even though we get a lot of them, we would get more if it wasn't for the Syrians. They hold that. They almost like they're holding that wall up for us and allowing us to walk through and get through. That's the Syrians. They're a necessary group that has been here since the beginning of time. They've always been in a healthy liaison with Pelagians. The Andromedans are a different entity. They were Earthlings, but we're talking about celestial groups that came here many eons ago, who had seeded their own offspring here. So, and then we have the Arcturians, which bring in that sound frequency, the wonderful artistic flavor, the sacred geometry, the things that open up our codons, our heart frequency, allow for the recalibration of our kundalini. Okay? So they do that masterfully through music, through art, through inspiration, music, sound. They are amazing. We have a lot of them showing up in their hybrids that they've hybrid here, and those beings who volunteered, who have the Arcturian frequency on them. They're here. So we have a great team. We have a great team of people here, celestials, intergalactics, and interdimensionals that are here assisting with our ascension process. And I see a beautiful future. I see it going amazingly well. And I see everyone getting to the point of dealing and fulfilling their contracts so that they can have an amazing golden experience once we get past this major wave and this pinnacle experience, big event that will occur to basically culminate us, to propel us into the future version of Earth.
Yes, well put. Oh my gosh, well said. I completely relate with that, and I feel that too. This reinsurgence of all this information and the guides. For people listening too, I just want to make sure that we're talking about multidimensional. Like, we are the multidimensional. We don't have to get into specific dimensions or anything. I just want to mention that all of these entities, all of these things are happening 24/7, and it's just a matter of what are you tapping into. Like I said, what are you listening to? What are you paying attention to? And using that, because it's not until you take action. Like, we have free will, right? The universe always gives you what you want. want. So it's not until you take action here on this physical plane to where you get more information, you know? And I think a lot of people are at that step where I think they're knocking on the door. It's just, there's, you know, what's that next step? How do I open the door? How do I get something? How do I, DMT, plant medicines, all these things are available and things are happening like crazy. It's just, how do we really channel this into something productive into our lives? And that's really where the magic is. And for me, it wasn't until I started actually listening and paying attention. Because, for example, anybody that's doing some sort of, crystal work, jewelry, light tools, anything like, you're being guided to do that. Like organite, there are so many things, right, that are available now. And it's like, that's not... Yes, exactly. You have that galactic influence right now, even though your small self, your intellect might not think so. It's just, you don't have to listen to that. Like, you don't have to cater to that thought, right? We are not our thoughts. We are more than this body. We are more than what you think you are. So it's a constant thing just to remind yourself with, because I think all of these people, all of us are having these experiences. It's just our intellect just wants to dumb it down so quickly, right? And say, oh, no, that didn't happen. Oh, just forget about that. And especially as a child, right, with our upbringing, our real programming, and it's like a lot of that stuff is getting washed away unless you have the environment for it to actually flourish. So that's really just my 2 cents there. Is I think this is very natural, and this is something that I want to help be a part of, just demystifying all this stuff, because it's not until you take action and use this into your everyday life to where you're going to get more of these energy and more of this information channeled to you, so you can actually use it for the highest good of all. And that's what's happening. That's going to be the answer to dispel all the darkness that's happening in the political event and the environmental destruction, all of that stuff. That's going to be the answer right there, like your inner work, your own path. Yeah,
that isn't our business. What our business is, and I love this one statement that one of my amazing mother matron teachers taught me, is when I'm looking at my reflection and I see a messy hair, and I say, okay, should I fix my reflection? That's not going to fix my hair. But then when I fix my hair and I look at my reflection, then I see a better version of myself. Yeah. You can't fix what's outside of you. You have to fix you, and your reflection will show a better version of you.
Beautiful. Well said. Well, awesome. I don't want to take too much more of your time here. Let's just leave our listeners, our viewers, with one last little tidbit. If you were to do like a practice, like I said earlier, whether it's meditation or anything, like what's that next step for people listening? What do they, is it a recipe that they need to eat? Is it a book that, an information you want to give them? Just one little tidbit that people listening can, take action on, so they can start creating that reality that they really want.
My number one thing is take your shoes off, go for a walk in the forest, and keep your eyes open and your ears closed. Everything that you desire and you need is in nature. That's the number one place I would say. You don't need money to go into nature. You don't need a book to go into nature, because books are made from the skeleton of trees. Yeah. The trees are there. That's where the infinite knowledge is. Yeah. That's my advice.
Beautiful. I love that. I could not agree more. It is so easy to get caught up in those systems of books and money or whatever, and it's so unnecessary. And I mean, for me, that's where I would say the majority of my energy and like what I've learned has come straight from that, because it's more of a direct conduit, than all of these opinions and things that you're getting from people. I love Ed Case. I love Terrence McKenna. I love all of these people that we've talked about. It's just at the end of the day, you're still getting their opinion, right? Their karma is like right in the middle, right? So the more you can just connect to that ultimate source, and the more you can purify your being in whatever way, whether it's diet or earthing, grounding, right, is something that has become the scientific. I love how science is just catching up to all this, right? And it's like something as simple as taking off your shoes. I think the language is just, obviously quantum physics is probably the closest thing to kind of put a label on it, but we don't need to go there. It's just funny how, like I said, these waves come and go, where it's just a different language, a different vocabulary to understand the same exact thing that we're doing. I mean, it doesn't get any more simple than that, as taking off your shoes and being outside. All of our ancestors all over the world was doing that. Everybody.
Put a little baby outside with no shoes. They'll walk around and they will be in amazement. Do you know how much interaction, how much intel, how much connection, how much perspective they get from just that moment of being in the oneness of nature? That's it.
It's true. Well, awesome. Thank you. How can people find you? How can people, let's plug your website, plug all the magic that you're doing on YouTube and all the digital world.
I'm just a mom who's a contactee from Mount Vernon, New York. But if you want to listen to me online, you'll know me as FleurBrun. It's FleurBrun. FleurBrun, which means brown flower. I'm on the internet. I'm always on YouTube, talking up a storm. So if you want to join me on that, and I'm new. Remember, I'm a woman of a certain age, so I'm on Instagram only because my younger millennials have directed me in that direction. So
Yeah.
if you want to find me on Instagram, it's at Del Goddess Del Goddess Love. So DelGaddes at love __ love. Sorry.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll put it in the description too, so people can actually click on it, make it easy for everybody.
For being more techy, I'm not the.
I was me too. No, it wasn't until, let's see, like I was living off the grid doing all of my thing. It wasn't until 3 years ago where I just totally, got a cell phone and had to, embrace all of this because this information needs to get out there. Yeah. And it was a particular friend who was like, the government's watching you anyway, man. They're listening. Why don't you just blast all this stuff out there, And it was that one conversation where I was like, you're right, man. I guess I got to just start talking about it. And that's why I created the Infinite Cup. And here I am a couple of years later. And it's amazing the receiving of this information, because people need it now more than ever. And, the work that you're doing, thank you again for doing that. This is so, so important right now. And this is happening at a very escalated rate now more than ever. So that's really where I feel like this is a calling, and it's just meant to be.
Awesome. Thank you again for having me. I loved it. It was so wonderful. You made me feel so amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, aloha. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, same to you. Peace.
Peace.